My name is Marilyn. Standing in the opulent conference room, the tension in the air is palpable. Patricia, my stepmother, is red-faced and seething, while Victoria, my half-sister, looks broken and bewildered. The room falls into an absolute, crushing silence as the lawyer, Mr. Thompson, reads the will. I, Henry Johnson, being of sound mind and body, do hereby revoke all previous wills and codicils, executed this 15th day of April, 2024, Mr. Thompson reads slowly, each word like a hammer strike. To my daughter, Marilyn Johnson, I leave 60% of my estate, valued at $5,200,000 in liquid assets, as well as 40% controlling shares of Johnson Medical Equipment Company, all voting rights and sole ownership of the family mansion at 32 Elmwood Avenue, valued at $3,200,000. Patricia shoots to her feet, her voice shrill. That's not possible. That's a forgery. She screeches. But I stay calm. I've been waiting for this moment. As the chaos unfolds around me, my mind drifts back to the beginning of this long and arduous journey. My father, Henry Johnson, was a well-respected businessman. After my mother passed away when I was a teenager, he married Patricia. She was a woman obsessed with money and status. From the moment she entered our lives, nothing was the same. She had a daughter, Victoria, who was 10 years younger than me. Patricia moved me to the attic right after they got married. She said the second-floor bedroom I'd grown up in would make a better playroom for Victoria. I was a young and naive 20-year-old, fresh out of high school, on the verge of starting my college journey. I thought it was just a temporary arrangement. The attic was a far cry from the comfortable bedroom I once had. It was a small, stuffy space with slanted ceilings. One tiny window looked out onto the backyard, where Victoria would often play with her friends. I had a small bed, a rickety desk, and a closet that smelled like mothballs. Victoria, on the other hand, had a huge room filled with the latest toys and a view of the lake. My life took an even more difficult turn when my father was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease 8 years ago. His voice was shaking, not from emotion, but from tremors, when he called me to tell me the news. Patricia immediately suggested hiring a nurse, but I couldn't bear the thought of leaving my father's care to a stranger. I remembered all the times he was there for me. When I had a bad breakup in high school, he took me on a road trip to clear my head. When I was struggling with my college applications, he stayed up late with me to write my essays. I dropped out of college to take care of him full-time, sacrificing my own dreams and future. The medical costs were astronomical. Patricia told everyone that insurance covered everything, but that was a lie. Insurance only covered the basics. It didn't cover the specialized treatments, the home modifications, or the expensive medications. So, I used the $150,000 inheritance my grandmother left me, and then I burned through my savings from my part-time jobs in high school, another $70,000. I took on freelance writing jobs, working late into the night between my father's medication schedules, scraping together another $120,000 over the years. In total, I spent $340,000 of my own money to keep my father alive. I became my father's caretaker, nurse, and best friend. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. every single morning for 2,847 days to administer his medication. I held him through the seizures, cleaned him up after the accidents, and accompanied him to all of his doctor's appointments. Patricia, meanwhile, was more concerned with her social life. She would go on vacations to luxury resorts, leaving me to deal with the stress and the burden of my father's illness. Victoria was no better. She was always busy with her so-called career. She worked at a tech startup in Silicon Valley and had thousands of followers on social media. She visited my father only 4 times in 8 years. The last time she visited, she asked him for $5,000 to buy a designer handbag. When he said no, she didn't call again for 9 months. At family events, Patricia would completely ignore me. At my father's 65th birthday party, which she threw at an expensive country club. She gave a speech thanking everyone who supported my father through his health journey, but she looked right past me as I stood there, holding my father's wheelchair steady. Victoria posted a selfie with my father on Instagram, captioning it, "So grateful for this man," but she left before dessert to catch a flight back to California. When my father's funeral was held at the Grand Crystal Ballroom, it was a lavish affair. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above the 350 guests, and the room was filled with the smell of expensive flowers. Patricia took advantage of the situation to humiliate me. She yanked at my old black dress that I'd bought at a thrift store for $30 and sneered, "You're just the help. After the funeral, get out of here." I stayed silent, not because I couldn't defend myself, but because I didn't want to turn my father's goodbye into a spectacle. Little did Patricia and Victoria know that they were clutching a forged will, thinking they could erase me from the family inheritance. They had a countdown of 72 hours to kick me out of the house. But my father had predicted their moves. Just when I was at my lowest point, feeling lost and alone, I received a text message from Mr. Thompson, my father's lawyer, at 11 p.m. On the night of the funeral. "Miss Johnson, we need to speak urgently. Do not tell Patricia. Can you meet me at my office in an hour?" I was confused but knew I had to go. I drove to his office in the financial district. When I arrived, Mr. Thompson led me to a conference room overlooking the city. He placed a sealed manila envelope on the desk and said, "Your father made me promise something 9 months ago. If Patricia ever tried what I think she's trying, I was to give you this." He broke the seal, and inside was a new will. Your father updated his will on April 15th. He was in full mental capacity, and I have 3 doctors' confirmations. "He left you 60% of the estate," he said. I was in shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He also showed me a thick, handwritten letter from my father. "To whom it may concern, my daughter Marilyn has been my primary caregiver for 8 years. She sacrificed her career, her savings, and her future to ensure I did not die alone. She spent $340,000 of her own money on my medical care when Patricia claimed costs were too high and unnecessary," the letter read. I started to cry. For 8 years, I'd been invisible. But here, in my father's words, every single moment of my sacrifice was seen. Mr. Thompson warned me that Patricia had hired the best probate litigator in the city, Mr. Harris. He would try to attack my credibility, motives, and relationship with my father, painting me as a manipulator who took advantage of a dying man. I spent the next few days preparing for the will reading. I converted the attic into a war room. I taped the last page of my father's letter to the wall above my desk. Below it, I placed a timeline, an evidence binder, Mr. Thompson's business card, and a notepad with the word focus written in bold. I organized 8 years of caregiving evidence into 3 binders. The blue binder was filled with financial records, 127 bank transfers, each one printed, highlighted, and annotated with what it paid for. The green binder had all the medical records, including 2,847 medication logs, ER discharge papers, and hospice visitor logs. The red binder was filled with Patricia's lies, emails where she told friends that everything was under control while refusing to pay for care, and text messages where she suggested discontinuing expensive treatments. On the day of the will reading, I walked into the conference room 15 minutes early, holding my 3 binders like a shield. Patricia and Victoria were already there. Patricia was dressed in a designer suit, and Victoria was scrolling through her phone, probably planning her next Instagram post. When Patricia saw me, her face contorted with disgust. "What are you doing here?" "This is a private family meeting," she snapped. Mr. Harris, her lawyer, also tried to prevent me from attending, saying I had no legal standing. But Mr. Thompson stepped in. "Mrs. Johnson, Marilyn is the primary beneficiary of Henry Johnson's estate. She has every legal right to be here," he said firmly. As the will was read, Patricia's world started to crumble. When she learned that my father had left the bulk of the estate to me, she lashed out, claiming that my father was not in his right mind when he made the will. But Mr. Thompson presented 3 doctors' evaluations, confirming that my father had full cognitive function when he updated the will. Mr. Harris then tried to use their forged will, which was dated 6 months after my father's neurologist declared him unable to execute legal documents. Mr. Thompson quickly pointed out that the will was null and void, potentially fraudulent. To make matters worse for Patricia, Mr. Thompson revealed that my father had hired a forensic accountant. It was discovered that Patricia had transferred $1,200,000 from my father's medical fund to her personal accounts between 2019 and 2024. The evidence was presented to the room, and the shock on Patricia's face was palpable. Victoria, who had always been blindly loyal to Patricia, finally started to see the truth. She confronted Patricia, and when she learned about the embezzlement, she was heartbroken. She turned to me and said, "I didn't know, Marilyn. I'm so sorry." In the end, Mr. Harris informed us that he was withdrawing all challenges. The will was legally binding, and I was the primary beneficiary. Patricia was in shock, and she was escorted out of the building when she tried to lunge at me. After the will reading, my life changed completely. I used $1 million from the estate to start the Johnson Caregiver Foundation. It provides grants for family caregivers, respite care funding, medical advocacy training, and legal resources for estate planning. Patricia was convicted of elder financial abuse and fraud and was sentenced to 18 months in a minimum security prison and ordered to pay $2,400,000 in restitution. Victoria decided to start over. She got a job at a local nonprofit as a marketing coordinator. She visited me one day and handed me a letter. In it, she apologized for her past actions and promised to be a better person. I didn't forgive her right away, but I knew that she was trying. And as I look at the future, I'm filled with a sense of hope. I showed up for my father when he needed me the most, and in the end, justice was served. True worth isn't measured by degrees or bank accounts. It's measured by the sacrifices you make when no one is watching.